TV is the resource to keep you and your IT team's skills up to date. IT Pro TV's team solution provides group pricing and access to their supervisor portal. You'll gain full control over your team's training schedule, see individual and group analytics, and more. IT Pro TV does IT live every day, so you know you're getting the most current IT training. Go to itpro.tv/Security Weekly and use the code SW30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. To learn more about IT Pro TV's team solution, sign up for a free demo of their supervisor portal. Has your network been breached? Cybereason can help you answer this question. Cybereason products hunt for threats within your network and eliminate them in real time. To Cybereason, real time means within seconds. Founded by former military hackers who don't play by the rules, they've built this experience into their platform. Harness ingenuity and imagination, not just code, to defeat attackers. Cybereason disrupts the adversary and let the hunt begin. Logarithm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns and application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logarithm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Endgame automates the hunt for both known and never-before-seen adversaries in enterprise networks. Built on unique knowledge on the adversary's tools, techniques, and tactics, Endgame's centrally managed agent prevents, detects, and responds to advanced adversaries in the earliest stages of the kill chain without prior knowledge. Endgame, automate the hunt. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. This is the security news for this week. First, make sure you come check out Wild West Hackin' Fest, wildwesthackinfest.com, HACKIN Fest.com. All kinds of great presentations from those in the security community will be there. You should too. Go register today. Jeff and Joff are here with me to talk about, among other things, SambaCry. SambaCry. I said it. I'm just going to keep saying it. SambaCry. SambaCry. This is actually a vulnerability we talked about like a couple of months ago. As it affects a lot of network-attached storage devices, the thinking was that ransomware was going to target these devices because you store your data on your network-attached storage. And it turns out, as Trend Micro warned, this is a growing trend, and people should patch. However, NAS devices are kind of their IoT class devices, and not everyone patches them because auto updates may exist, they may not. And this is a super easy to exploit vulnerability. And it has been dubbed Shellbind. The malware works on various architectures, including MIPS, ARM, and PowerPC. What's interesting is they didn't mention Spark, which is what my NAS runs on at home. So maybe they'll port it to Spark just for me so they can pwn me and my NAS at home, which is a Netgear-ready NAS, in case you're wondering.
Sounds like a T-shirt. Hack my NAS.
Hack my NAS. And there you have it.
That sounds like a bumper sticker. Hack my NAS.
I actually think in terms of a Linux worm, this one has, it has some legs, right? Because
then it's a centipede.
It has a lot of legs, like a centipede. It's the centipede. They should call their worm the centipede, Jeff. That would be awesome.
We coined it here on Security Weekly.
That's right. Well, because so many of the NASs run embedded Linux, they have Samba enabled because people have to access the files, and that's the best way to let people access the files. And not a lot of people are updating the firmware on their NAS because it's an IoT device. And somehow people think that if it's an IoT device, I don't need to update the software on it. So there you have it.
Or possibly they don't know how to, don't want to take the time.
Correct.
So there's other
there
reasons.
might be more of the latter case there. They don't know how to, don't want to take the time. Hey, it's there in the closet. It's across the room.
Yep.
Just leave it alone, let it work. That sort of attitude. So yeah, challenging.
You know what's interesting too? So many devices are available for the home. Have you guys seen this new Echo Show device?
I have not.
So this is an Amazon Echo device, and I'll try not to say the keyword so that we don't trigger people's devices, but it's an Echo device with a touch screen on it. And because I want to be as vulnerable as possible at home to experience the full vulnerableness in my home of all of these devices, I bought 2 of them because Amazon was having buy 2 and get $100 off. It can act as an intercom in your home, and essentially it's a voice-activated touchscreen device, which my kids really enjoy. It has a lot. So far, I really like it. I think it's really cool. It connects to both Ring and Arlo, so I can tell the Amazon Echo, "Hey, show my front door camera," and it'll access, my Ring device and show me the camera on it, which for security purposes, physical security, has some benefits. However, it has some features that I think are really bad, like this feature called Drop In. So it creates this contact list of people that can just call, and essentially it'll auto answer. So I didn't.
So it's like a whitelist.
Yeah, it's exactly that. So I didn't communicate with my wife about my security, in detail, my security concerns with these devices. I was like, hey, I ordered a couple of Echo Shows for the house, and I'm going to configure them, and the kids are going to love it, and it's going to be great. She was like, that's nice. My wife she's married to me. She loves technology and gadgets, right? Because it's like table stakes. And she's like, if it makes our lives easier, that's fine. I didn't have the in-depth conversation about what features should be enabled, and we were configuring it last night on our respective smartphones. And she's like, oh, I enabled the drop-in feature. I'm like, no, that's the one thing that we cannot enable. Drop-in is a feature that lets anyone basically call and enables the camera and microphone. And I'm like, that's the one feature where I had really big security reservations. And so we spent about 15 or 20 minutes making sure that it was disabled on all of our devices and backing out the changes that she had put in place, which was kind of interesting. And it's interesting, too, because it sits on a countertop, and when you're standing up, it's kind of crotch level. They were talking about this with Graham Cooley in the Smashing Security podcast. My take on this, and I don't know what your guys' thoughts are, is I think a lot of people kind of bash the newer technologies that Amazon especially is putting out that enable some of these more convenient features in our home. And I'm kind of it's like any other technology. Your security level comes down to your diligence about enabling or disabling features or configuring it in such a way that you're comfortable with the security features. And now, obviously, those security features can be bypassed. And then that comes down to really more diligence and also monitoring.
I keep thinking you're going to say that your security comes down to crotch level. I don't know why.
It could.
Why?
Well, good.
Why did you bring up that the thing sits at crotch level?
Well, because someone would only really hack me once, and then get a crotch level view, and then not really want to hack me again. This is my point.
Yeah, and they'd be like, "Oh no!" I
just wondering where you're going with that.
I can't unsee this.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's I think a lot of people won't adopt the technology because of this, but I kind of play the middle ground in that the security level is all about how you treat the device and your own configuration and diligence about how you're configuring it and securing it in your network. Do you guys agree, disagree?
Well, I only to a point, right? I mean, I think you're verging a little bit on privacy as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that conversation. If the device actually has noted software vulnerabilities that allow an attacker to exploit a feature that then sacrifices your privacy, that's not just the user's problem, right? That's also a vendor's problem.
Correct.
So I think
it's not if you have cameras in your home or other devices in your home or your smartphone, conceivably there could be software vulnerabilities that allow people to violate your privacy. I don't think a lot of these newer devices like the Echo Show are drastically different from that, right? And you need to treat them as such.
Well, I think the key word that Jeff said is feature. I mean, a lot of these things are just features. Like good old fashioned networking technology. Like we were talking at the break about how at our last tech segment it started with everything is broken or the internet is broken. And it's like, well, it's not that the internet is broken. It works very well. It's just that it's insecure, because it's designed to do something that's counterintuitive to what we consider to be good security or good privacy. So now we're extending it into the consumer household. And, if we could lump people that are using these devices that are flocking out to get them, besides techies like you, it's probably younger people, millennials types, that sort of already have a reputation of not giving a whole lot of care, and I'm overgeneralizing, of course, about security and privacy concerns. As long as the stuff works, as long as it's cool, and they can do all the things that it advertises that they want it to do. I don't know how we convince people, whether it's on tablets and devices and phones, or if it's IoT, to care about the security and privacy concerns that these things bring into their environment.
Yeah, and it's a great it's a great segue into our next story. Come on, everyone should have seen that coming. About how IOActive researchers have shown, and I'm going to present at Black Hat, about how the Segway Mini Pro, which I own, I've showcased here on the show, is vulnerable to attack. And when I read this article, I was kind of like, well, yeah, I knew that when I bought it, right? I knew that it had Bluetooth, and I saw how it was set up, and I'm like, that's going to be hacked. There's no question about it. My concern with this particular platform is, unlike some of the other devices I have in my home, where I can turn features off or configure them in such a way that it would be more difficult for someone to hack them. From everything I've experienced with owning this product for over a year now, and reading about it today, is that the way an attacker gets into your Segway and hacks it is over Bluetooth and can upload firmware which is unvalidated, which then can turn off safety controls, which essentially allows an attacker to stop the device while you're riding it and cause the rider harm in some way. The thing about it is that I'm concerned about is I can't disable Bluetooth on this device. I can't disable the feature that's causing me this insecurity because, again, being a user of this product, the product requires Bluetooth in connection to a smartphone so that essentially it can track for safety reasons, which is one of the things that people complain about the most about this device. And I had to say I agree. You have to put so many hours into this device to unlock the faster speeds. And it requires a Bluetooth connection to the phone to log in, to set it all up, configure your account, log those hours to you as the rider to be able to say, yes, you've ridden this device, for however many, a mile or what. I forget what the...
So that's not a safety concern. That's a CYA concern.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's twofold. Well, it's probably more a CYA concern.
It's more...
Yeah. They're saying, look, we've done the due diligence such that we've forced the consumers of this product to ride at a safe speed so they can learn how to ride it, as to minimize the effect of injury, so that when some idiot gets on it and rides it at the top speed, falls flat on their face and busts their face open, which is totally possible, believe me. I think the top speed is 10 miles an hour, which doesn't sound really fast, but
That's
when
fast.
you're standing on a device, it's fast, dude. Like the distance from your head to the ground it's a lot. Like it can do some damage. I've taken some spills on it. It's not pretty. Now I can blame that on hackers, which is nice.
But back up a minute, Paul, and just not to put you on the spot. So you've owned this device for a year. In the last year, how many times have you done anything, under the category of updating, patching, configuration changes to it?
I don't actually know how the firmware on the device is updated. It's kind of interesting. It really likens the scenario of, like, I had the app when I first got it, and I connected it Bluetooth to the device and did it so I could, ride it around and change the settings to make it go as fast as it could go. And then I didn't really look at the app because the problem is when you're on the app, it tells you how fast you're going and such, and that's cool when you first get it. However, if you're looking down at your phone while you're riding the Segway, you're going to run into something. I found it very distracting and a safety violation for me to be like, oh, I'm like riding my Segway and I'm looking down at my phone and, oh my God, look, hey, there's a car or a tree or a curb or something, and there I go flying off the Segway. So I don't use the app largely for safety reasons. Because it's just not feasible.
I can just see, I totally can see Paul. Okay, the app's not working for me. I need a heads-up display. So
you need like Google Glass or
Google
something.
Glass,
yeah, something.
Hey, speaking of Google Glass, I didn't put a link up because I heard it on the radio on NPR today. But apparently, Google Glass is making a comeback for some reason. I don't know if anybody else heard about that.
Interesting.
We can report on it later, but they've made some sort of changes to it to alleviate some of the concerns of the previous.
So my concern with the Segway is I can't find a way to disable Bluetooth on the device. In other words, like I've used the Bluetooth to do the initial setup. As a user of the device, I wish I could just disable Bluetooth now, and I don't want to use the app anymore. I just want to ride my Segway because it's unlocked. I've done the training. I'm actually, I don't like the initial training where it regulates the speed. Once you do the initial training, it does still regulate the speed. Like once you reach top speed, it'll actually slow you down. I really don't like that feature either, and that's kind of independent of that initial phase where you have to put so many miles on or a mile on it or something before you can unlock it like regulates you to 5 miles an hour, and then once you go a certain distance it unlocks you to 10. When you approach 10 it actually slows you down. I kind of hope that now that the researchers have done the research that they open source it so I can put firmware on there that lets me ride it as fast as I want, because now I know how to ride it. And I'm like, that's awesome. And maybe inside of their hacked firmware, I can also disable Bluetooth and have a more secure Segway at the end of the day. That's really kind of my point.
There might be a hardware solution, Paul. I mean, there's always the snip the wires to the radio kind of
something. Solution. Yeah. Exactly. I don't want Bluetooth. My point is, I don't want Bluetooth on my Segway anymore.
So you're saying I haven't experienced this software interface, but are you saying that once you have configured it with Bluetooth and everything, that Bluetooth is actually not needed at all?
Correct.
Unless you go back and reconfigure?
Correct. Yeah. The Bluetooth, once you get past a certain point of passing all the tests and you have to do some stuff on the app to get it going and say that yes, I've ridden it this much or interacted with it to a certain point to get it going, and then you don't need the app to ride it. And since I've done that, I really just use it to ride around my neighborhood. And to be honest with you, it's my neighbors think I'm ridiculous because I ride around my neighborhood on my Segway, and it's largely to go find my kids to tell them it's time to come home, or they're at a friend's house in the neighborhood, and I'm just riding on my Segway to go get them quick to bring them home. So.
Well, I was about to say, do you really need the Segway for them to feel like you're ridiculous? But besides
that too, it reinforces the ridiculousness factor for me.
But besides that, why couldn't the manufacturer just put a hardware switch on there? That seems so idiotic to me.
Yeah, I would love a switch on it that just turn Bluetooth off, because really it just presents a risk after a certain point for me.
Anyway,
well, maybe this vulnerability will compel them to add that feature.
Yeah. I hope so. Let's see. How do you guys feel about warranties and insurance for breaches?
That's a long topic.
Yeah. Well, there was 2 articles. One is it's interesting. Insurers claim that hacks could cost more than Hurricane Sandy, which is, that's really a clickbaity kind of headline. And Aztec announces a $5 million security breach warranty. Now, the warranty is only valid, as with most warranties out there on the market today, if you operate within certain parameters as to not violate your warranty. In other words, if I crack open my Segway, I might violate my warranty. If the company is monitoring those security services and they've also partnered with Qualys to do vulnerability scanning, and they do other security stuff for you. If they say, hey, we're doing this stuff for you, for these systems, for this application, we'll warranty up to $5 million of damage for a security breach.
So are they saying
Go
that
ahead, Jeff.
you only need to do vulnerability analysis and not pen testing? Because the thing that immediately got me was you're trying to put pen testers out of business, which could be entirely possible just by insuring it and saying, okay, well, screw it, we're not going to pen test, we're just going to insure it.
No, they provide all kinds of security programs. I'm not sure if pen testing is included, but
Yeah.
they provide security services to an organization and give you that $5 million breach warranty.
I suppose another way of saying it is this just turning into an excuse to not perform due diligence? And that part would bother me.
I think
Not
I
only
think
as
the
somebody
large
who
answer
benefits
to that
from
is
the
yes,
industry
Jeff, 'cause-
of performing the due diligence, but
Yeah.
but just from the perspective that people should anyway, in my opinion. I'm sorry, Jeff, you were saying something.
It's okay. I kept thinking you were stopping, and you kept going. Must be the jet lag.
Must be.
No, I agree. I think, and of course I have to bring up PCI again. The idea of
Drink.
insurance, breach insurance, has come up for years, and it was certainly advertised in the early days, and there was a lot of attitude around it as, we can't possibly do all these compliance requirements, all these security requirements. It's so expensive. It's so hard to maintain. The whole mantra of when companies are breached, the council and media saying, well, they weren't compliant at the time of the breach. This all points to good marketing for insurance companies to sell policies. But if you have the belief that you're going to get off the hook from having to do a lot of the security requirements or the compliance requirements, because you have that insurance policy, this has been my opinion for a while. I think you're in for a rude awakening when the breach does happen, because if you have any experience with insurance policies of any form, they don't like to pay out if they don't have to, and they do a certain amount of investigating and due diligence. And if they find out that you're not meeting what we consider to be security best practices, e.g. the security or the compliance requirements, you're probably not going to get paid out. I think it's interesting too that the breach amount is for $5 million. That makes it sound like they're marketing it to smaller merchants, the ones that really do have a real honest problem with meeting all the requirements because they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the resources, financial resources to do all the things that the compliance and security requires.
Yeah, and so Aztec's program is a managed security program that helps organizations secure their web applications, and they're looking to expand that into more than just web applications. And the article did point out that Jeremiah Grossman works for a similar company, SentinelOne, that offers a $1 million guarantee against ransomware for its customers. So this is seemingly an increasing trend in our industry.
Interesting. You mentioned web applications. It's sort of a sidebar, but I'd love for us to have a tech segment sometime, with some of the guys we had on tonight, especially talking about the vulnerabilities of web applications in the context of in the PCI world, for a lot of small merchants that are just either they're doing e-commerce or they're doing their point of sale through a web application, and they think that they're getting away with doing the bare minimum, which is the SAQ schedule version A, which is basically, we outsource everything. Our payment page gets redirected to another site. We don't touch the data. It's all routed over. I would love to hear some of these web application guys talk about what could still be done to your website, even though you are doing a complete redirect, frames or not, over to a payment processing site. Just food for thought.
No, it's a great topic, and Geoff, I'm sure you've run into this too, doing penetration testing of web applications. scoping is a big issue when you run into that, because
It is.
you may have a main website or application, and then they have hooks to, well, when we do lead tracking, that's like some iframe that we include that's another company, and when we do payment, that's a iframe to another company. And if you're doing an application assessment, like, where are those lines drawn? And you have to make sure that you're not pen testing some third-party provider that has not given you permission to do that pen test, right, Joff?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it's a scoping issue. What we often find is the scoping discussions come down to, we got payment processor X, and yes, it is integrated in the web app, but you need to ignore that, and most customers explicitly point it out, or in the course of the test, less often, fortunately for us, I suppose, in the course of the test, we discover it and go, hey, what is this thing? And it looks like we shouldn't touch it, and then it comes back from the customer that, no, you shouldn't touch that. So that does occur on a pretty frequent basis, actually.
Well, and the merchants, they're told by the payment processor, we're compliant, we're service providers, we're good, use us, and you're fine. And that's really all the merchant can do. But on the other hand, the pen tester that's hired by the payment processor that does have this payment app, I doubt if they're doing the type of level of testing that has the pen tester coming in over the merchant application and introducing whatever it is that they're going to try. I have a strong suspicion that there's cracks in between the two that could be exploited.
Yeah, I was just thinking that as you were saying it, Jeff. I've often, numerous times anyway, encountered situations where there might be some sort of shopping cart situation
Right.
that is actually implemented by the customer that we're testing. That is completely in their scope, nothing to do with the payment processor. But the very last step of a multi-flow transaction is then the actual token step or whatever that goes off to the payment processor. But everything up to that point is within scope, and so it does get fairly blurry in that aspect, because you've got to very carefully divine between these two things, and to make sure that you are adequately testing the scope of the business and transaction flow that is.
It requires cooperation that just simply isn't part of the process, because individually the merchants and the service providers are doing their PCI compliance separately with separate criteria, separate scoping from their perspective. I don't see a whole lot of sort of the big picture. How does this all work together, and what can we do to break things? So it's kind of a letter of the law. Each side can claim we're following all the rules, and yet I think there's probably this gap in between where there's room for exploit.
This next article talks about the comparison between exploits in the cyber realm and comparison to physical attacks. And I think even today, many make the comparison of so-called cyber weapons to physical attacks. And I think we're still, as a society, struggling with how to communicate and understand what it means to have these hacking tools or exploits or malware that are targeted at an enemy of the state, so to speak, versus some kind of physical attack. And there are so many ways in which that analogy breaks down. I think a great example, one they call out in the article, is that when you have some kind of malware or hacking toolkit and it's deployed to an enemy system, that particular piece of malware can be reconfigured to do a number of different things. It can be configured to just monitor. It can be configured to do slow damage over time. It can exfiltrate data. It can cause damage. Whereas when you have a physical attack, there's really like one shot to accomplish one goal, such as a missile, launched and does some kind of damage and then it's done. When we talk about things in our realm in the security community and deploying hacking tools or malware or backdoors to the enemy, it really is a foothold that can be used to do multiple things. And that's just one of the small differences between physical attacks versus the so-called cyber attacks. A lot of drinking involved in this story.
Yeah, lots of drinking
I've
because I think you
certainly
said the
heard the
word cyber
term.
1, 2, 3,
Yeah,
4,
like four.
maybe 5 times. But it's a tough analogy. I know people use it a lot. I agree
It's a,
with you, Paul. I think it's when you've got established command and control, and the command and control that's established can be used to essentially morph and modify and change the way you engage with that environment. I see that more like having an embedded spy almost.
Yep.
If you want to draw the analogy to the physical, but I think where it really breaks down is where, as so often is the case now, the software attack has kinetic effects, and then the analogy sort of totally loses focus because then the things just blur together because we have these physical effects that are coming from software control. So I don't know. What does Jeff think? Let's throw it over to Jeff.
I'm going to put on my Jedi Master hat a minute because one of the things I talk about for effective communication is telling stories and is making analogies. I think it's an art form, and I think the particular. I know I've heard the term on the news, sort of military grade exploits or military grade O days or something, something to that effect. Does it paint a picture that's often inaccurate? Yes. Does it help a layperson understand something bad is pointed at me? Maybe that's good enough. Analogies at some level always break down. There is no perfect one-for-one analogy. I think the goal is taking the analogies and extending it as far as you can, as far as you need to, and you can have fun with it, but you also have to understand its limitations and express this isn't an exact one-for-one picture of what I'm trying to explain to you, but it has a lot to do with explaining concepts rather than details, and that's hard for us in our community to do, and I've put myself in that category. I often am telling stories and telling analogies when I'm with customers, and in my head I'm thinking, this isn't exactly right, but hopefully it gets the point across. And I've had to overcome that feeling. So, I'm okay with it not being completely accurate as long as you can sort of frame that and sort of make that understanding, as long as you're trying to get that concept, whatever concept you're trying to get across. Now, in this case, I think a lot of it's been the media trying to, catch headlines and trying to come up with fun terminology to, increase readership and viewership and stuff like that. So all bets are off on that, and everything I just said doesn't apply.
Well, and that's amplified too, Jeff, because the media sort of jumps on the bandwagon with Hollywood. There's been this glamorization over time of the industry, with respect to all the movie trails and everything else that goes on, right? So the glamorization, I don't think is helping. It's media is sort of jumping on board and using that as a way to sell more stuff, which media is prone to do, frankly.
Right.
Very true.
Yeah. So use analogies wisely, I guess, is what I would conclude.
There was an article from eWeek that said exploit kits are disappearing as cloud and mobile security challenges grow. Having covered this industry for some time, they present some data here. I don't feel like this could really be true, to be honest with you. I think there's still so much money to be made from attackers that are attacking regular systems and applications and browsers on physical computers that I don't think we've seen this shift. And yeah, I know they present data, but I just feel like this is fueled by some other kind of marketing campain.
What are they selling?
Yeah. That was when I read a headline.
I have a hard time with it too, Paul, because if you just think about the certainly there's an explosion of cloud-based services. Okay, great, but there's also an explosion of client-side attack surface. We all know that we're carrying around mobile devices which have inherently flawed code on them. Some of us that have done mobile application security assessments have found massive problems with the mobile apps on these little iPhone and Android platforms and others. So I think it's more almost the opposite. You can you can take any data and skew it to your purposes, and it sort of feels that way to me.
Well, and to help everybody understand what Joff is saying is we're all walking around with Tomahawk missiles in our pocket.
Exactly. Oh no, mine's bigger than a tomahawk. Oh, whoa. Oh, sorry.
Well, and often they pulled survey data, which it depends on how you ask the question, and the way you ask the question can solicit, I think, people to respond in a way that gives you results that are favorable to support whatever notion you're putting forward. And all of this is really summarized in this e-week multiple series of infographics, which one of them looks like a bunch of penises. So I'm just throwing that out there.
I mean,
and also, what's the definition of an exploit kit?
Yeah.
There's things open to interpretation. This is something that I observed actually while I was doing my talks in Australia. Dwell time of attackers within environments actually getting better as a metric? Is it reducing? Is it being detected? Yeah, I think because people are actually turning towards threat hunting these days. But that's a whole different topic. But there is sort of mention to that in some of these stats that I find a little bit interesting. I think some of our efforts towards steering the industry more in a data analytic and anomaly-based approach is actually paying off in terms of trying to find persistent adversaries. But that doesn't mean the exploit kit side of it's going to necessarily decline. But it may change the view of the stats.
Yeah, I just think it's, I don't know, take that with a grain of salt. I mean, considering that I've done research in looking for evidence that people are compromising Android devices, for example, that then go in and target IoT devices. Certainly there's been some strains of malware that have done that. And certainly not anything significant, but like, how do you even classify that? And when you classify that, like, how does that even help in any case? Very similar to studies that show that healthcare industry lacks awareness of the IoT threat, according to a survey, which we've talked about on the show.
Wow,
quite a bit. And I really think it just kind of skims the surface. Of course, if you ask anyone in healthcare, IT, or security, they're going to say, well, yeah, all these applications that are being deployed on devices are a threat. I don't see how that helps, to be honest with you.
Well, we've had some healthcare discussions with some individuals. I'm not remembering any names right now.
Well, people who are really working to help come up with a solution, like Josh Corman and Katie Mazuris.
There we go, Josh.
Those guys.
So,
and gals.
Statements like that. I mean, maybe we should bring that back around. I think healthcare is very important. We can certainly bring individuals back in and talk to them about the fight. But the fight continues. Those people, Josh is a great example, doing their very best to actually make forward progress. So,
the healthcare environment in general is difficult to defend, especially my dad being. Many people don't know that my dad's been sick, but spending some time in hospitals and such, like the level of security is just. My 9-year-old is very much the hacker of the bunch of my kids so far. He's just like, when you're in the hospital, right, and they have to like push the button and like the doors open, and they're starting to shut. My 9-year-old's the one that's like, hey, I can like run in there without like going through any authentication kind of and get in there. I'm like, that's like the medical. IOC or whatever they call it, intensive care, ICU, intensive care unit. I'm like, you don't want to go in there, dude. He's like, but I can go in there because the door like opened up, right?
You must be proud though. At a
I
certain
am.
level.
Oh, dude, I'm so proud. I'm so proud. We were visiting another facility where we're going to put my dad, and they're just in the process of construction in this particular facility. And we didn't know like which door to go in, so we're kind of walking around the facility. And my son's like testing every single door, right? He's like, Dad, look, this door's open. He's like, they should really lock that because anyone can just like walk in. Yeah. But that's how most healthcare facilities, like you can just, because you can just walk in, right? And that's, I feel, part of the huge challenge. Simple. I mean, you've pen tested medical and healthcare facilities, Joff, right? The physical security test it's just frightening because it's an environment where, people that you can just walk in, maybe visiting someone or servicing equipment or if you put on scrubs, that's just like your instant access to the entire environment, and that's kind of scary.
But Paul, it's frightening to us because we're talking human lives, we're talking what could go bad, and it's sort of immediate. But and I'm not trying to downplay it to the degree that it hasn't happened more often, other than ransomware attacks. It is testament to there's no money in it. But that doesn't mean that, I'm waiting for somebody to get taken out, in terms of like an assassination or a hired hit, and they figured out that they do it from that. I mean, I think that's the most tangible danger, because most of the bad guys are in it for money, and if there's no way to monetize it, why bother? Move on.
Well, and I think over history, as we've seen, Jeff, that attacks that are very opportunistic like that tend to be the real true outliers and not the norm. Like you said, it's more likely that someone's going to execute some kind of ransomware attack and make some money rather than specifically target an individual that they happen to know is going to be in a healthcare facility at that time. Like, I think that's why we're in the situation we're in terms of the overall security of healthcare today.
Yeah, well, yes, I agree with that. I mean, and it's sort of the 800-pound gorilla of our whole industry. We've spent trillions to protect against the casual, opportunistic hacker because we're defenseless against the targeted attack, because we know, those of us that are pen testers know that given enough time and opportunity, you're going to get in, because there is no way to lose almost. Real quickly, if I can flip to one of my articles, not to pick on the healthcare industry, but the article about the Trump hotels are hit by the third card breach in 2 years. The article talks about how the hospitality industry is notoriously bad at security. So, but again, it means, was it a couple months ago, there was an attack against, was it Hilton properties, that people were getting locked out of their rooms because their key cards were compromised. So what's that's an inconvenience. That's maybe somebody missed a flight or something like that, or missed a meeting, but that's inconvenience. To dovetail back to the healthcare, something bad happens at healthcare, somebody dies. But we could go after all the different industries and point out how they're flawed in some way and how they're not up to speed and they're not doing what they should be doing. But what grabs our attention is the ones where people's lives are involved.
But that should grab our attention too, not just as general populace, because if we in the security industry are going to actually attempt to, frankly, make traction or make a buck in the healthcare industry, we have to tie it to life safety, because there's no other way it's going to happen. If it's just casual, hey, you should secure your device because it's going to get owned. The medical side of the industry is going to be, where's the life safety concern? That's going to be the first question.
Right.
I agree. Well, I think it comes down to liability and loss, right? I think with all of let's just talk about IoT in general, kind of on a closing note, because we're running out of time. I bought a brand new GMC vehicle, and once I configure a password and a 4-digit PIN code, I can remotely start my vehicle. Now, having been the victim of people who are breaking into cars in my neighborhood, the level of sophistication is like really at opposite ends of the spectrum, right? The people that historically and more recently have broken into my vehicles are targeting my cars that are parked on the street because I want to let my kids play in the driveway. So I park my cars on the street. I forget to lock my vehicle, and I have a cheap FM transmitter in the car. The door's open, and they steal the FM transmitter. Now, the level of sophistication when we like transfer that to, I want to start the vehicle and drive away with it because I'm guessing a password or bypassing some security controls inside the app. Like those are two very, very different criminals in my perspective. What happens when those two different criminals like start to converge? I think we'll see change in the way we treat IoT security and security of devices when those start to converge. You know, in the meantime, to prevent those kind of dumb criminals, you know, you have to lock your doors. However, I am still concerned about the more sophisticated criminals that can get into something like the GMC app, and I'm looking forward to talking with all our friends at Black Hat and DEF CON about what, you know, research is going on in terms of especially GMC vehicles. I know Ford has a Ford Sync, which I'm assuming allows a similar thing. I'm looking at buying a Ford vehicle, and nothing against foreign cars, but just happens to be the vehicles that I'm looking at. You know, how similar, you know, the Ford system is in terms of remote start and security. So I think it's kind of interesting to see as we progress how security changes for all of these devices, and that extends to medical as well. And I think Jeff was talking about it when there are documented incidents where there's either theft or loss of life. I think security will start to improve, and I think it's a shame. And I think all of us, the elephant in the room, is us as security professionals think really bad things need to happen before we implement security. And the goal is hopefully we implement security before those bad things happen. The reality is a lot of those bad things need to happen before I think we affect change on a global scale. But that's just me.
No, but that's
I think
the way it works.
You're right, Paul, because I think everything we've just been circling around is somebody's going to have to get hurt and hurt enough before people start paying attention. And we've seen that in our industry, unfortunately, over and over and over. That's kind of a reactive stance, and we don't like it at all, especially if there's a human life involved. I mean, my God, we don't like it. But it seems like that's the norm right now. So, unfortunately,
no, but it's always been the norm. Look at the automotive industry.
It's true.
We don't think twice about airbags and seatbelts these days, but I grew up going to the beach, lying on top of all the luggage in the back of the station wagon, and I was a torpedo ready to launch. And I lived to talk about it, but the idea of being strapped in was just foreign back in those days. There had to be enough accidents with enough people dying that not only did seatbelts become law, but first of all, seatbelts had to even be an option and then a feature available in cars, because there didn't used to even be seatbelts at all.
I have to tell you a couple things on a closing note. It's really friggin' cool that from a smartphone app, I can start my car. Like, if you haven't started your car from a smartphone app, like I did it last night for the first time, I was like, that is really cool. I was impressed. Now, as a security professional, I'm like, that's also very, very, very scary for me to be able to do that, right? You can start and stop the car from your app, and that's really scary. And I think that I'm looking forward to speaking with all my friends about the security around those things. Having said that, though, it also has some security benefits. In other words, if my vehicle is stolen, I can call up GMC or OnStar, right, or do something in my app and say, hey, my vehicle's stolen, and through that OnStar service, they can actually slow down or stop the vehicle if someone has stolen it, so the police can actually get the person that's stolen my vehicle. That's kind of interesting, too, that remote access, same remote access that allows me to start and stop my vehicle, can also be used if I report a theft to help protect my vehicle and find the person that's stolen it. So
Goes both ways.
Same thing
need
with
a
that
remote
smart device or
self-destruct feature.
IoT devices at my home that allows me to monitor people that's at my front door through the doorbell, right? Yeah, there might be vulnerabilities there, but it also allows me to monitor as well. So it's interesting, that paradigm.
Hey,
Does
before
it
we
have
close
a
out, I
remote
want to do a shout
self-destruct
out,
feature?
if I could.
Yeah, so Jeff said there should be a self-destruct feature on the car, right? If my car is stolen, in my app, self-destruct, the car just blows up. That's awesome. I like that.
That would end the stealing problem.
It
Yeah.
would. Joff, closing thoughts?
Oh, closing thoughts. No, quick. Totally off topic, but I just want to give a huge shout out to my students in Australia. Canberra, you guys were absolutely awesome, fantastic. And for the Adelaide and Melbourne talks, love you guys. Great questions. Thanks so much for being there.
Jeff, you have shout-outs as well?
Just looking forward to next week, catching up with people out in Vegas. Should be a good time.
I agree. I am very much looking forward to Black Hat and DEF CON and B-Sides Las Vegas. If you're going to be attending any of those conferences, please do hit us up on social media. We're planning on being very available while we're out there. Our schedule is really tightly packed. However, we are allotting for a lot of time to commiserate with friends, listeners of the show, friends of the show. So please hit us up, Facebook and Twitter. Or if you have my cell phone number, I have yours, or we have each other's, please text us. We will do our best to meet up with people and hang out at Black Hat and DEF CON. I feel like that's the purpose of those conferences, is to network with people, and I really want to do that while we're out there. Sam and Mark are coming out there from Security Weekly. Jeff will be out there. John will not be out there.
Jack's already there.
Jack is already there, which is why he's not here this week. So and again, we'll be at all three. We're staying, a lot of us, Jeff, I don't know about you.
Tuscany.
We're staying at the Tuscany, so we'll be there. I think Sam said to me today that we did get, because we have a room, we have tickets to B-Sides Las Vegas, so we'll certainly be hanging out there for some time, especially Tuesday when we get there. Wednesday and Thursday are largely Black Hat related events. Friday and Saturday, largely DEF CON. I don't know when we're going to do a cigar meetup. There was talk about Friday at 9 p.m. We might move that to sometime during the day, just because it's going to be really busy at night on a Friday night at a lot of cigar lounges in Vegas. So stay tuned for that. Look for us on Facebook and Twitter. And come find us. I'm looking forward to see everyone. I'm so excited to see all of our friends and meet new people out at the conferences that are going to happen next week. We're not going to do, I don't think, very many shows at all. There might be Doug White, Jason Wood might be filling in for some shows. So there might be a little bit of lull in shows for podcasts while we go out there. But we'll have a lot of content as we come back, of course, as Jeff Mann, myself, Matt Alderman has pledged some support to help us with some content that we're producing at Black Hat and DEF CON. So thanks, everyone, for listening and watching. That concludes this edition. We'll see everyone when we get back from Hacker Summer Camp. Over and out.